Good morning, everyone. As Russ said, my name is Caleb. It's so good to be with you. I'm sharing a shorter message for us this morning. I was nominated because I'm the youngest guy to share, so I guess that makes me, and all of you kids are here. Can I get a whoop, whoop? Awesome. It really is a bit of a unique Sunday. We're baptizing a number of people at the beach. We're in here shorter, but it's also a Sunday to celebrate. This is a profound moment as a church. One of the very end goal of all that we do is this. All the effort, all the ministries, all the home groups, all the service that you give, the end goal is that we would see lost children come back into the family of God. And so this is a Sunday to celebrate and rejoice with heaven. It's also a Sunday to really remember the good news of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And I just want to say, if you're visiting us today, maybe you haven't been in church for a while, or maybe actually you're exploring faith in Jesus, and you're not you wouldn't consider yourself a follower of Jesus. We just want to say welcome. Thanks for being here. I know that it's always a bit tricky and nerve-wracking. You don't know what you're going to get asked to do anything, but I really trust that today is going to encourage you and maybe even provide some of the answers that you've been seeking. Thinking of baptism, I was actually baptized in Zimbabwe when I was 10. My dad baptized me, and when you think of Zimbabwe and you think of Africa, it is good and right to think of things like lions and giraffes and elephants. I have ridden an elephant, everyone. They are much more sore on the bum than you think. But the other interesting thing about Zimbabwe is that it's a country with a record high inflation rate. I remember in 2008, we were going to kind of a local grocery store or a restaurant, and every morning we had to buy local currency, and we had to buy boxes, like shoe boxes of money, local currency. In fact, I have a photo up on the screen, and I have here a $50 billion note. $50 billion. If you want to be a billionaire, come up to me afterwards, and we'll see how far they get you. But at the time in 2008, inflation was 79 billion% per month. So you would literally have to buy money in the morning, and if you hadn't spent it by the end of the day, everything you bought was worthless. All the cash that you had left would not count for anything. And so what we did was, in that time, we traded. We exchanged things. So instead of buying money, we would say to someone, okay, we'll give you a ride here if you can service our car. Or we'll trade clothes for food. And so we traded and exchanged all sorts of crazy things in Zimbabwe. I don't know if any of you are into sports cards, baseball cards. I was actually researching that yesterday. Most expensive baseball card was sold for $12 million. So if you're looking for a different job and something with a little bit more money in it, maybe baseball cards is the future for you. But I don't know, any of the kids do any sports cards things, like sports cards collections? Okay, great. So you guys know what it is to exchange and trade things. And in fact, what we had in Zimbabwe isn't all that different from what you and I have today, if you think of it. We're always exchanging something for something. So we're exchanging money for clothes. We're exchanging value or time for something in return. And so really, the whole idea of exchanging value for products and services, although in Zimbabwe it was a bit unique because we couldn't actually use this. We had to use physical goods and materials. That principle really applies to our world today. And here's the thing I want to say. If we're honest, most of the exchanges that you and I make in our everyday, they are relatively insignificant. They're relatively small. But today, I want to tell you about an exchange that changed the course of history itself. In fact, time itself is divided down the middle by this exchange. We have BC on the one side, before Christ, and AD, Anno Domini, the year of our Lord, on the other side. Time itself was divided by this exchange. And today, we're going to call this the ultimate exchange. All the kids say ultimate. Come on, guys. Everyone say ultimate. Exactly. You got to mean it. Okay, so 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21. There it is on the screen. This is telling us what this ultimate exchange is all about. This is what Paul says. He says, God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. You see, while you and I were worried about all these smaller, less significant exchanges of our life, I'm going to exchange money to buy a house, I'm going to exchange value for a boat, or I'm going to buy clothes, or whatever it is you're into, while we were busy with those less important exchanges, God was busy making an exchange of a lifetime, the ultimate exchange. And what exactly is this exchange? 2 Corinthians 5 tells us the exchange is actually quite simple. Our sin for God's righteousness. Our sin for God's righteousness. You see, 2 Corinthians 5:21 tells us that God had no sin, but that you and I did. We had sin. Paul reminds us that all of us are imperfect. All of us sin. All of us make mistakes. If you don't believe me, just ask your parents or ask your family. All of us sometimes don't tell the truth. Maybe it's to our parents. Maybe it's to the government when we file our taxes. All of us sometimes want to take things that are not ours. Let's be honest for a moment. If we look around, all of us have parts of our hearts that are actually more inclined toward ourselves than anyone else around us. We're selfish. Some of us hurt people with our words. We say things that hurt people. Some of us love other things more than we love God, like money or pleasure or comfort. You see, every single day, all of us sin. All of us wear sin, like this black coat. We wear it. Earlier this year, I got really sick. I don't know if anyone's been sick this year, but I got really sick this year. And every morning, I kept waking up thinking, okay, today I'm going to get better. Surely, today. Today I'm going to get better. And yet I woke up and the symptoms remained. And this went on for week after week, day after day. I stayed sick. I could not kind of shake the sickness. And you know what? It's the same with our sin. Whether you're old, we won't tell anyone who's old here. Whether you're young or medium age, all of us can't shake the sin. When we go for the test, we come out positive, S-I-N, positive. We've all been diagnosed. We've got a diagnosis, it's S-I-N. Paul says this in Romans 3. He says, for all have fallen short of the glory of God. All have sinned. And so the truth is, if we're honest, we all are in need of great help. And not only that, but the Bible tells us that God has a righteous anger towards sin. It's not just like I stole a cookie out of the cookie jar, I'm sorry. There's a righteous anger and a righteous punishment, more than you can imagine, against sin. Because remember, God is holy. God is perfect. Think of this for a moment. The God we worshipped in that previous song, there is no darkness in that God. There is no sin in that God. When God responds to a situation, He responds perfectly. When God thinks thoughts, He thinks perfectly. Everything He says is absolutely pure. Every facet of His character and personality is 100% pure and holy. Think of snow. You wake up in the morning and it's snow and it's completely white. You only see white. When you see God, all you see is white holiness. And because He's holy, because His holiness is like white as snow, because of that, He cannot be close to sin. He cannot get close. He cannot be reconciled to us because remember, we're sinful. And so the question is, what do we do? What does God do? How does He get close to us if He can't get close to us because of our sin? And the answer to that is He makes the ultimate exchange. Your sin, my sin, for His righteousness. I'm going to ask Mercy and Lucas. You guys are going to come up. These are my two volunteers. We're going to kind of show everyone what this is like. And I got to get this jacket off me. Okay, Lucas is going to stand here, and Mercy is going to stand here. And I'm actually going to ask you, Lucas, you can put that white coat on for me, and Mercy, you can put that black coat on for me. Okay, very nice. So we have Mercy representing man, and we have Lucas representing God and holiness, okay? So what does God do? How does he solve this problem? Well, there's only one thing he can do. God has to send his son Jesus. Remember Jesus, he's holy, he's blameless, he's never stolen anything, he's never lied, he's never done anything bad. He's completely righteous. And what happens is God has to take the sins of the world and put them on his son Jesus. So Lucas, you're going to come over here, and now I want you to take the coat from Mercy and actually put it over that coat. No, you got to put it on. You got to put that. So Mercy, you're going to just stand there for a moment. So Jesus takes our sin and puts it on him. And in his death on the cross, he's obedient to his Father. He's obedient. And in his obedience, God brings the full wrath and punishment, his righteous punishment, upon his son Jesus. All your sins and my sins laid on Jesus. We're going to get that collar there. There we go. I don't want anyone to see any white for a moment. There we go. Beautiful. Remember 2 Corinthians 5. It says, God made him who had no sin, he had no sin, to be sin for us. Okay? And on the cross, Jesus pays the penalty for our sin, which is death. So you've got to play dead for a moment. You can lie on the floor. Okay, Jesus is dead. It's very important. That's very good. You should get into Act 10. And so for a moment, you've got to realize that what this is what it looks like to experience the wrath of God against sin. We cannot downplay or undermine the righteous judgment that God has towards sin. It's so serious that it cost Jesus his life. That's how serious our sin is. Jesus is dead. But that's not all that happens. Because remember, that's only half the exchange. The exchange isn't over yet. Now that our sin has been taken care of and punished on Jesus, God does something else. He takes the righteousness, so Mercy, you can come over here. He takes the righteousness of Jesus and he puts it on us. He puts the righteousness and the perfection and the holiness of Jesus, everything Jesus did, his track record, and he actually puts it on us in place of our sin. This is what Paul says in 2 Corinthians 5, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. In Jesus, you and I become righteous. So what has happened? Our sin is on Jesus, and Jesus' righteousness is on us. The ultimate exchange. What has happened here? A few things, 3 things. 1, God's righteous judgment against sin is satisfied. You're doing good. God's righteous judgment is satisfied in the death of Jesus. The second thing that's happened is that our sin has in fact been punished because it cost Jesus his life. But there's a third thing. We have been made holy. And now, I'm going to ask you to stand and take the black jacket off. And now you can come stand next to Mercy and you can hang that up. That's been taken care of. Actually, get rid of that. Get rid of that. Take that out the church. We have Jesus and us reconciled, both holy in the cross, in the life and the resurrection of Jesus. Our sin has been punished and we've been made holy. And because we've been made holy, we are now able to be in friendship with God. We are reconciled to God. All right, we're going to give you 2 a round of applause. You can go grab a seat. I want to close just with a quick story. I remember in my junior year of high school, I grew up in a Christian home, like many of you, and there was a moment in high school that I really actually decided I didn't want religion anymore. I didn't want to follow Jesus. And so what I did was I turned and I ran in the opposite direction. All my friends were coming to school on Monday, telling me about all the great things they did, parties and girls and substances, and you can fill in all the blanks. And I wanted to experience those things, and so I did. And so I ran from God. And I got to a really low point in my life where I felt dissatisfied. I felt empty. And my parents then forced me to go on a Christian camp, as good parents, I think, do. I don't know. I didn't find it very helpful at the time, but actually I did, because that's where I found Jesus again. Because on that camp, the preacher got up, and I was in a low space, consumed by sin, consumed by shame and guilt. And I remember the preacher getting up and telling me that God knew everything I'd ever done. Jesus knew everything, which I wasn't too excited about, but I was quite amazed by that. And then he said this, he said, God knows everything you've done, and he's taken your sin on himself as if he's done it. And in place, he's given you the righteousness of Jesus. And that means you can be free if you believe and you have faith in Jesus. And I couldn't believe it. It sounded way too good to be true. But I could feel the Spirit moving in my heart, and I decided that moment to put my faith in Jesus again. And since that moment that I kind of found God again in a more true way, I remembered that because of this ultimate exchange that's taken place, when God sees me, he doesn't see my sin anymore. When God sees me, he actually sees the righteousness of Jesus. That is what faith is. That is why when we gather on a Sunday morning, it's actually almost irrelevant how good or bad you've done that week. It is irrelevant because in Jesus we are righteous. We are able to come to God with the righteousness of Jesus. And you know what that truth does? As I reflect on this great exchange, it actually makes me want to obey God more. I obey God now not because he tells me I have to. I obey God because I get to, because I love him. And so as we celebrate these baptisms today, really what we're doing is we are witnessing this symbolic moment of the great exchange, the ultimate exchange. Those that are getting baptized are exchanging their death due to sin, going under the water, and coming out alive with the righteousness of Jesus, reconciled to the Father who created them. And so in Jesus today, I want to invite you, and Russ is going to lead us in response, and I'm going to invite the band to come up now. In Jesus, I want to invite you to consider these exchanges that maybe you have to take place, that you've got to decide to make this morning. Maybe for you, it's your sin. You need to exchange your sin for his forgiveness. Maybe for you, it's shame. Maybe you've walked in this morning and you have shame. You need to exchange your shame for his acceptance. Maybe it feels like you've got darkness in you, secrets, hidden things. Maybe you need to exchange that darkness today for his light. Or maybe you're lonely. Or maybe you feel dead. You need to exchange that for his friendship and his life. Can I invite us to stand? Russ is going to lead us in a moment of communion, but before he does, communion is a moment for those that believe, those that have put their faith in Jesus. And maybe you're here this morning and you've never put your faith in Jesus, but this morning you feel it clearly. God is calling you to accept his forgiveness and to accept his righteousness. Could I invite us just for a moment, just to give each other the space? Could we just close our eyes? If that is you this morning, while all of our eyes are closed, if you are feeling the tug of the Holy Spirit on your heart, if you're hearing the voice of the Father, come home today. Would you mind just raising your hand for a moment, just so that I can see? Great, I see those hands. If you put your hand up, just repeat this prayer after me. Jesus, I turn from my sin. I acknowledge my need. And I put my trust in you. Come and wash my sins away. And in the place of that, cover me with your righteousness. Cover me with your righteousness. Let's stay in this moment as Russ leads us in communion.